Welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. The topic in this one is the Senate, GOP will end us. Yes, I think they're going to end us. Let's take a look at something recently written by Robert Reich, who's not often my go-to guy, but he did a very nice, short, and to the point piece the other day called How Mitch's Do Nothing Republicans are Killing Us. And I'm just going to go through it. The Senate adjourned and left town without even trying to pass a COVID relief bill. By the time they return on November 30th, which by the way is tomorrow, based on current trends, an additional estimated 16,000 Americans will have died from COVID-19. We pay these elected officials to keep us safe, and they've failed us. To them I ask, how much death and suffering must the American people endure before you act? And he says, quote, remember House Democrats passed a comprehensive relief bill all the way back in May. And he goes on, you, Mitch McConnell, have refused to lift a finger for months, and Senate Republicans have been happy to follow your lead. Well, I'm not sure they were all happy to do it, but they did it. Anyway, continuing to quote, countless Americans are now paying the price for your malicious inaction. You should have learned lessons about COVID during its first horrific wave last spring. First, there's no trade-off between COVID and the economy, and no way to get the economy back until COVID is under control. As the virus surges and more shutdowns loom, the millions of jobs we've added since April are about to disappear again. I've said this since March, and I'll say it again. The only way to get our economy back to full strength is to control the virus. Second, more shutdowns are necessary. Businesses like Tesla in Alameda County, California, and Tyson meatpacking plants in Iowa remained open during previous shutdowns, and both companies suffered COVID outbreaks. No exceptions this time around. Third, and most importantly, shutdowns are only viable if accompanied by disaster relief, so Americans can survive financially. So pass disaster relief. Re-up expanded unemployment benefits. The extra $600 per week provisioned in the CARES Act expired on July 31st. And all federal relief will expire on December 31st. Expanded unemployment benefits were a financial lifeline for millions of Americans during the first and second waves. It must be instituted again to keep millions out of poverty this winter. Don't listen to people who claim that we have to get people back to work or keep them working. The best way to stop the spread is to pay people to stay home. Stop evictions and foreclosures. It would be the height of cruelty to force even more people out onto the streets in the middle of winter as the virus surges. And with more job losses around the corner, we must ensure that a missed rent or mortgage payment isn't a death sentence. Distribute another round of paycheck protection program loans to businesses with strict oversight to ensure the funds actually go to businesses that need them, not massive publicly traded companies that have plenty of other options. Shore up state and local budgets. State and local governments are facing huge budget shortfalls. Without federal aid, vital public services are on the chopping block. schools, childcare, supplemental nutrition, mental health services, low-income housing, healthcare, when the public needs them more than ever. And local governments need funds to shelter unhoused residents, especially as temperatures drop and COVID intensifies. But protect essential workers. Tens of thousands of workers on the front lines have contracted COVID over the past 10 months, including nearly 20,000 American warehouse workers. At a minimum, they need generous hazard pay and paid sick leave. When the last COVID relief package was passed on March 27th, there were 18,093 new cases that day. Now there are over 100,000 new cases every day, with hospitalizations lagging behind cases and deaths lagging behind the hospitalizations. It is clear this is going to get much, much worse unless people shelter in place. But most Americans can't do this without relief. The writing is on the wall. Do your job, Mitch McConnell. Our lives depend on it. Quite right. A number of comments, however. Distributing another round of Paycheck Protection Program loans to businesses. A lot of those loans were not made. A lot of the previous provisions were never used, not because people did not need them, but because in the Paycheck Protection Loan Program, the interest rates for many businesses were too high. They need to be nearly at zero, and the option has to be provided to roll over those loans in perpetuity, if necessary, to give businesses a chance to get back on their feet. There was a reason why the PPP loan money was not used by those who needed it, because it was too expensive for them and too risky for them. If this is really for the protection of small business, the program has to be better. It has to be much closer to a grant program than it was. With state and local governments, we need to have loans available to them that are nearly at zero interest, as low as loans to any private sector companies, and they too have to be rolled over for as long as it takes for the states to recover. That's the only thing that's going to work. So we can't do what was done before, giving states a little bit of money and making it available at interest rates that were so high that most state and local governments would not take advantage of the state and municipal loan facility that had been established at the Federal Reserve. And yes, there were 18,093 new cases that day, and now there are over 100,000 new cases. How much over 100,000 new cases? We want to know that, don't we? We want to know that. So let's look it up, and we find that as of yesterday, there were 145,000 new cases. As 2 days ago, there were 167,000 new cases. Some days, the new cases recently approached 200,000. They are getting up there. There's no sign of it slowing down. As of yesterday, deaths per million were 821 in the United States. 821 deaths per million. In Taiwan, which is one of the most successful places in the world, an island with nearly 24 million people on it, with a Medicare for All system patterned after the Medicare system here, actually designed in large part by American consultants who went to Taiwan to help them. There have been in Taiwan 3/10 per million versus 821 deaths per million here. As of now, Taiwan has performed 2,400 times better in terms of deaths per million than the United States of America. It is a total miserable failure. It is a scandal, in large part due to the Republicans and their leadership, and due to the Trump administration and its leadership. In the preceding election, the Republicans were not sufficiently punished. People didn't have their eye on the ball. They still elected far too many Republicans. There was only a gain of 1 seat for the Democrats in the Senate, when the gain should have been more like 13 or 14 seats. It was a failure of the American people. It was a failure of the American people to learn what was really going on in this country and who was really at fault. Yes, of course the Democrats are partly to blame too. Of course they have not acted well. But the main barrier to relief, the main barrier to reform, the main barrier to managing the pandemic well has been the Republicans from the very beginning. There's still runoff elections in Georgia coming up on January 5th. There are 2 Democratic candidates. They're not the most exciting in the world. They're not the best candidates from a progressive point of view. But there are 2 crooks running on the Republican side. 2 people whose votes and behavior in the Congress were dictated by their private interests. It's apparent in both cases. There's no way the people of Georgia, if they have their own interest in mind, should vote for these incumbent senators. It's still not too late to give Joe Biden a Senate he can work with a little better. That needs to be done. That's all for this progressive shortcake. I'll see you next time.